And then as it progresses, I think it piles upon itself because I keep driving down that dark place and keep driving into that hole. And if I don't consciously move myself away or somehow get shocked into a change. And then when I went into treatment, which was January 3rd of 1985, so it was just a few days later, I went into treatment then and I started to feel like...
Do you feel like you're living your purpose, and are you in your purpose right now?
I do. And it's funny because I haven't felt that way until probably 2 years ago. It's, we touched on it a little bit earlier, but it's getting sick and tired of being sick and tired. Yep. Getting sick of banging my head against the wall and doing the same thing and expecting different results and just getting to a point where you're just done.
From addiction to author, from rock bottom to purpose, it's not just about getting sober, it's about choosing to live life fully every single day. Daryl Dittmer's story is proof that your past doesn't define your future. Through his books, When I Stopped Fighting and When You Stopped Fighting, Daryl shares the raw truth about transformation, healing, and what it takes to reclaim your life. In this episode of the Thriveable Journey, we dive deep into purpose, identity, and the power of turning pain into impact. This episode, what sobriety really takes. Let's begin. Hey family, this is the Thriveable Journey. Look, life's too short to just get by, and 2025 is the year to persist. We're here to grow, build, and thrive. This podcast is all about powerful stories, real talk, and practical steps to help you level up in every area of your life. Now, if that sounds like something you need, don't just watch, be a part of the journey. Let us know you're here. Do us a favor. If you're listening on the podcast platform, download the episode. And if you're watching on YouTube, you know what to do. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on those notifications so you never miss an episode. And as we always say, let's make thriving our new norm. Yeah. Today we have an incredible guest, Daryl Dittmer. He's an entrepreneur, author, and a living testament to transformation. From overcoming adversity and decades of sobriety to building success on his own terms, Daryl's journey is nothing short of inspiring. So get ready for powerful insights on business, sobriety, and living beyond your wildest dreams. And Daryl, how you doing? We just met, and I can tell you feel centered.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate you having me on your show.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. As we have people on where we get to know their stories, it's things that like move me and things that I would love to, explore in the world of entrepreneurship and business, but also as becoming a full human being and the purpose of who we are and why we're here. And I know you have a story to tell about, kind of your early years. And can you just kind of share who you are and what that story is?
Absolutely. Well, I started in the Midwest, in Michigan, actually, as a kid. I was born in Detroit, and
I'm from Grand Rapids, so
oh,
I was
for real?
born in Flint.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was born in Flint. Yeah, from Grand Rapids mostly.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
So, Midwestern upbringing for me, it was my dad was a mechanic. My mom took care of the kids, and that was just kind of the household sort of thing back then. And it was, my dad was also, he's a pretty tough dude. He was a veteran. He was very into, do the right stuff and respect and, chest out, chin up, all that sort of thing. And my mom was a pretty strict person too. And so that's kind of how I was raised. I was raised in a fairly strict household and I don't know exactly what that means. It just means I was raised in a very strict household, and that was that. And I think it was a positive thing in many, many ways, in terms of just a start in this world and understanding that, not everything's going to be the way I want it to be. And a lot of no's. and a lot of, you're not going to get that. And that was cool.
Yeah.
I remember my dad when I was 14 years old. We moved out to the country, and we were at church one Sunday, and that was a big part of my upbringing too. And he put me in front of this farmer, and he's like, "Can you put him to work?" And the farmer's like, "Yeah." And so $1.50 an hour, and busting my butt, and we were doing, up to 14-hour days sometimes, and even probably a little bit more. But that's how it was. That's what was expected. And I remember being on this farm, and it was a steer and a hog farm, and I had called them tennis shoes back then, but
yeah,
sneakers.
I do too.
Yeah, I still do too, but I'm trying to get with the times here and call them sneakers or whatever. But they had holes in them, and I was covering the holes with duct tape, and I'd be walking through 3 or 4 inches of cow and pig stuff, and and I wanted
Nice.
boots, I wanted work boots. And I went to my dad one time, and I was like 15, and I said, "Dad, can I get some work boots?" And he was like, "Yeah, you can. You're working, so go buy yourself some."
Yeah. Sounds like
And
my dad.
that was how it was, and that was cool. So I got some of those lessons when I was a kid, which were helpful for me moving into adulthood. But
Yeah.
I got started with drinking and drugs when I was 13 years old, and I don't want to belabor it, but it was, for me, it was a progression that wasn't normal. It wasn't like, kids just having fun or experimenting, whatever. I wanted more, and that's what became my focus. I still worked. I did all the things that I needed to do, but relationships suffered, grades suffered, got in trouble, did a whole bunch of stupid things. And I don't glorify that part of my past. I just tell it like it was. And by the time I was 18 years old, I was toward the end of my 18th year, heading into 19, and there was an intervention done by my parents, and they knew I was, pretty deep in the drugs, and I was dealing drugs, and I was just doing things that weren't, indicative of living the life that I was raised to try to live, and the person I was raised to attempt to become. And basically they said, "Go talk to this social worker, and if you don't," they gave me the choice, either talk to him or don't. If you don't, get out of our lives, and if you do, then let's see what happens. So
Yeah.
it was a scary time. I mean, I'm 18 years old. I think I'm tough. I'm not. I don't have the tools internally to deal with difficult things like that, and that scared me. And so, for whatever reason, I decided to go talk to this guy. But I was planning to lie, just like I had lied my way through the rest of my life up to that point. And so, as soon as I walked in his office, he's like, "You can't lie to me." I'm like, "Oh, crap."
He read you right then and there, huh?
He knew what was going on. He'd done this before, right? And so he intimidated me. And so, for however it rolled out, I don't remember the conversation, but I do remember that I told him the truth to the best of my ability at that time. Whatever that was, whatever that looked like. And that was probably about a month later. I went into a drug and alcohol treatment program, and I was inpatient for 30 days. And that was the beginning of my new life.
Yeah.
So I'll end the story there, because there's a lot more.
There's a lot more. There's a transition there. Just to get an understanding though, was you think that the strict household pushed you that way, or was there something that you felt that was missing that pushed you towards the drugs and alcohol? And if so, like, can explain a little bit of what that is or was for you?
Sure. There was a December 31st of 1984 was New Year's Eve, and I was at this party, and I was with about 200 people or so. And I'd never felt more alone in my life, and I'd never felt more isolated in my life. And I just had this big hole in the middle of my chest. And it crossed my mind at that party. I said, I'm not sure I want to be on this planet anymore. And that's where it got for me. Now, how did I get there? My opinion is, and for whatever it's worth, I don't jump too far into the psychology of it necessarily, but I would say that there were high expectations as a kid. There were, my mom was either, hey man, you're going to be a preacher or a doctor.
Right.
Neither of those happened. And
neither of those happened.
None of those happened. But there was this line that we had to walk.
Mm-hmm.
And there was also a line that we had to walk from a religious perspective, because I was raised Lutheran. And so that was either you're doing the right stuff or you're going to hell.
Mm, okay.
And those were the choices. And so I'm always feeling that, that fear, that guilt, that, oh man, am I doing the right things? What if I do this? What if I do that? So I think everything contributes, right? And everything contributes to starting. And then as it progresses, I think it piles upon itself, because I keep driving down that dark place and keep driving into that hole. And if I don't consciously move myself away or somehow get shocked into a change, it just keeps going. And I think it self-perpetuates.
Yeah, I think when a lot of us are dealing with things or feel like we're missing something, that we want to fill it with whatever. It could be drugs, alcohol, it could be, sex, money, whatever it may be. And then there's a point where we're like, there has to be a change. We get tired or fed up or whatever it may be for that person. And there's a shift that happens spiritually, mentally, eventually physically. What was the moment? I know that you went to the counselor, but what was the moment in your life that you said, okay, stop, no more. I got to make this shift. I got to make a change.
It was probably that New Year's Eve party. I would say, if I was going to pick a moment where things became different inside me a little bit. You had mentioned it. You get tired of it. I'm a big believer in, we need to get sick and tired of being sick and tired before we change.
Yeah.
But then, I feel that there are several moments, and I feel there were several moments for me, but that was probably the inflection point. And then when I went into treatment, which was January 3rd of 1985, so it was just a few days later, I went into treatment then, and I started to feel like, and I started to look around at people who, they'd have us go to 12-step meetings, and we'd talk to counselors who had been where we were at some point, many of them. And I started to look at them, and I'm like, man, these people kind of have it together, and they seem happy, and they don't have this big gulf in the middle of their chest, and they're confident, and they can talk to people, and they can have conversations, and they can look people in the eye, all things that I couldn't do at that point. And so I think that I believe there's a momentum to getting worse, but I also believe there's a momentum to getting better and to healing. And some of those points, there's maybe less than 10 in the entire time I've been on this planet where I could say that changed me, or that was a moment.
Yeah.
So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah.
Michael.
So you had that moment, like moments. What did you do after that? Did you do AA or Al-Anon or whatever it was, or whatever? What did you choose to get your life back on the track that you saw for yourself or your future, and then started going that way?
The thing that I sort of latched onto at that point in my life was the 12-step program. I
Okay.
got involved in AA, and that's what they introduced us to in the initial treatment program. And I didn't know anything else to do, because one thing they said to me, which I think is incredibly important, is when you change the game, you got to change the players. And so
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
couldn't hang around with the people that I used to hang
Right.
around with.
Right.
And so I had to find a community. I had to find um, people who wanted what I wanted, to be better and to be different and to feel better and all those things. So that's what I chose. And what I found briefly in the AA program was the 12 steps. And the 12 steps are, there's only one of the 12 steps that talks about drinking or drugs or whatever.
Hmm.
And that's, I think, pretty uniform across all the 12-step programs that are out there these days. But only one that talks about that. The rest is about changing myself. And the
Hmm.
rest is about being a better person and taking out the garbage and cleaning my side of the street and helping others, and more of a conscious contact with whatever higher power I believe might be out there,
Hmm.
whatever you want to call it. It's up to the individual. So it became a roadmap for me, and that's what I latched onto. I latched onto a roadmap for living.
Roadmap for living. Oh, okay. I like that. So you're on this roadmap for living. There is some intrinsic transformation that started to happen for you. What did the outside world begin to look like for you? What was the shifting looking like from that world to your next world?
It was profound, and it wasn't. They say when you're doing a change, right, or you're making a change, or you're moving somewhere else, wherever you go, there you are, right? So you're
Yeah.
bringing
Yeah.
yourself with you,
Yeah.
and so I needed to change me, and that's not an overnight process. So I still I still did stupid things. I still got in a little bit of trouble, not the kind of trouble that I got in before, but and I didn't drink and I didn't do drugs, but the transformation was gradual. And as I went through those steps, and then I started to get excited because I met people who were really happy and really content and fulfilled, and some of the people I met were successful from a financial perspective, but successful in life. And that was probably the coolest thing, is the successful in life people that I met. Um, so so I started to surround myself with those kinds of people, and I listened to when people would say to me, and I never was really tempted to go back to the crew that I used to hang out with, but it's easy to not be discerning about your world and about who you're surrounded with. And people would say, and I don't know why I'm full of cliches today, but I'm going to say it. You lay down with dogs long enough, you're going to get fleas, right? And that's one of them. And I listened to those things. So I tried to choose people who wanted to be on a path like I wanted to be on. So in choosing that, my entire world started to shift.
I like that. I'm gonna have to cut this. Give me 1 minute. She is
Yeah, no
barking.
worries.
Hold on 1 second. Right in the middle of your story.
It's
Right.
all good. Yeah, it's all good, man.
Sorry about that. All right.
No.
Just kind of I'm gonna just pick up where you left off. So lay down with dogs, wake up with fleas, right? You made that shift. So did you feel like the people that you were now connecting with was mirroring who you were at the time, and then where did that lead your life to?
They definitely started to mirror my life or mirror what I wanted, but I tried to. One of the big things in the 12 steps is finding a mentor, and they call it a sponsor, but I call it a mentor because I've had many mentors in my life, and I tried to choose, one mentor, somebody that I could relate to and listen to and respect, how that person lived their life, and I found one, and his name was Bud, and he was the reason I was, I guess, attracted to his sort of way is because he seemed very content, and I looked in his eyes. And I was like, man, that guy's got something. There's a peace there. There's a centeredness there, and so that's what I was attracted to. And he helped me work through the 12 steps, and he also helped me understand that there are other ways of understanding life. So I started diving into Taoism and Buddhism and just reading, and just seeing that there are many different ways other than the way that I grew up being told to live life and to change and to get better. And along the way, a few years in, I was, well, I'll say I went to college. I was the only person in my family to ever graduate from college, which I decided to do after I got straight. And I was fortunate to be able to do that. And when I got out of college, I got a criminal justice degree because my brother was a cop, my grandfather was a cop, my other grandfather was a firefighter. That was just that was
It's
that
in the
was
bloodline,
that
right?
was it. Yeah, it was so I got that degree, but I didn't get that degree as much because that's what they were. I got that degree because I had no idea when people talk about business or marketing or finance. I'm like, are you serious?
Hmm.
I got out of college. I didn't know the difference between wholesale and retail. So,
Okay, yeah, right.
so when I got out of college, I went back to what I had been doing, which was at that point was carpentry. I was framing homes. I was kind of a blue collar kid, and that's what I started doing. But then somebody asked me to get involved in a sales thing, and I was like, you know what? I'll try it. And that was actually ended up being a multi-level marketing thing, which was crazy,
Hmm.
but it was fine. It taught me a number of things. And then I got involved in sales again, and then again, and I kept trying, and so I'll cut it off there. That's kind of part of reaching for me. It was part of taking risks and doing things that I wasn't used to doing, that I'd never heard of being done.
Hmm.
My family wasn't from that place, so my my dad actually came up to me a while before that, and he said, "Well, I got a spot on the assembly line for you if you want it." And I said, "You know what? I'm good. I think I'm going to choose another path." And so that's the path I started to go down, the risk taking path and putting myself in situations I had not heretofore been in.
Yeah, there's such a great amount of shifting and changing and transformation that's happened in your life in these years. Um, some that I can attest to for my life. There's, we grow as we get older, we grow. And the transformation that happens. I came from a religious background too. I know, like some days on Sundays, I pretend to be asleep. And then my mom was like, yeah, if you don't get up, you're not going X, Y, and Z. I'm like, oh, I'm up, I'm up, I'm up. I got to go to church. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then throughout life, I forged my own path and found my own path, you know, of what I wanted to do and who I wanted to be. And, we go through our transformational stages in our places. And you've gone through that, and like I'm reading here, like you said, you started as a carpenter, sales, and then you end up being a business owner, a builder, a landlord, real estate investor, and consultant. You have many hyphens. So your life is definitely transformed, and you shifted into the entrepreneurship space. How did that happen?
Well, I had a job as a sales person in a firm. It's a long story, but actually ended up moving out to Boston with a different risk-taking venture. And everybody decided to go back to Michigan when it didn't go well. And I said, you know what? I'm staying in Boston. I'm the only guy that stayed in Boston, and I'm going to try some other stuff. So I got hired on as a sales guy, and then and that went well in this particular industry. And then the company that I was with got bought. But one of my business mentors at that time, who I sought out, he was a client of mine. He said, you know what? If you really want to make real money, you got to have ownership. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, okay. All right, let me try that. So I ended up being the top sales guy for this little company, and I went to the owner and I said, you know, I'd like to get some ownership. And he said, all right, well, what have you done? And I said, well, this is all that I've done. And he said, okay. And before he gave me that ownership, he sold the company, which was a little upsetting.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But the new guy that came in, I ended up being the second largest shareholder in that firm. So that was the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey, and that was something that I loved, because I was writing my own story, and I had the ownership. So there was something that John Paul Getty said a long time ago. I don't necessarily align with his values from what I understand,
Yeah.
but he did say, he said, I'd rather make 1% of 100 people's efforts than 100% of my own.
Yeah.
And that's what ownership can allow us to achieve. And that's what it helped me to get into. So I did that for a number of years. And then I said, you know what? I think I've had enough. We're becoming too much like, I'm not a corporate guy. There was something about me that, even when I was a kid, I said, you know, I'm not wearing a tie to work. I'm sorry. I'm just not doing it.
I agree.
Right. But I did it for a little while, and then it got so corporate-y, and it just didn't feel right anymore. And this little boutique company that we had started to get big. And I said, you know what? I think I'm out. So I got involved in some real estate, which I had done also in part of my previous career. I got involved in a couple of different properties, and then my wife and I bought a restaurant, and I bought more properties, and that's just the momentum of the entrepreneurship just continued forward, and it was great, and not everything went extremely well. Some things didn't go well,
Does it ever?
which
It
is
doesn't always go well.
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I learned a lot, and I learned a ton about things going well and things not going well, and each of them helped me immensely.
Yeah, for me, I know after university, I struggled to find, not really struggled, but I was just seeking, my place and what I wanted. And my dad is a business owner, and he also worked. And my mom was like a very free spirit. And so like I got both of those genes running in my head and my body. And so I had to figure it out. And I remember, I think, right after graduation, I worked, I went to Europe. After that, I came back. And then I worked for a car rental place. And I won't say the name, everybody will know the name. But I was like, I was depressed, and I was upset. And I was like, I need to find what I want to do. And so I left Michigan, moved to Atlanta, and then from Atlanta moved to Los Angeles, and now I'm back in Atlanta. So I kind of We kind of have a similar direction
Mm,
there. But in that whole space, trying to find, the entrepreneur inside of me, there was a lot of self-doubt. So did you have self-doubt on your path? If you did, how do you handle that? And what advice would you give to entrepreneurs? Here on the Thrival Journey, we talk a lot about not just surviving, but thriving. And a big part of that for me has been understanding my health on a deeper level. That's why I partnered with Live Good and brought it under my company, Orion's Health. Not just because I believe in the products, but because I've seen what they can do firsthand. I've walked through some hard health chapters in my life, including cancer and a kidney transplant. And I know what it feels like when your body's working against you. That's why we're offering 2 free tools that help me and can help you too. First, go to myfreehealthreport.com/Orion's Health. Take our quick health questionnaire and get a personalized report created by Dr. Ryan Goodkin, Live Good's Director of Product Development. It's clear, actionable, and totally free. Second, visit myfreedetox.com and get a free chlorophyll and zeolite detox bottle with your first product order. It's a gentle, natural way to clear out toxins and start fresh, something I personally use and stand behind. This isn't just a sponsorship, it's part of my mission through Orion's Health to help people thrive in body, mind, and spirit. Of course, always, always, always consult your physician before starting any new supplement or health regimen. Your body is unique, and your healthcare provider should always be part of the conversation. The links are in the show notes. Now tap in and take your next step toward thriving. That kind of has a
tons,
similar thing that we have.
tons of self-doubt, Michael.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Garbage bags full of self-doubt.
Right. The 40 gallons.
Yeah, there was a lot. I mean, it was, I was unsure for a long time. Unsure of, is this the right move? Is this the right direction? What am I doing? Why did I choose this?
Mm-hmm.
Sales and business ownership is a difficult thing, and it takes a while.
Yeah.
I have a son that's in sales now, and he's gone through the ups and the downs. And I just said, exactly what you have behind you. It's not over when you lose; it's over when you
You
quit.
quit. Yeah.
And that's 100% it. I mean, so how did I deal with self-doubt? And it's a very simple formula, and it's not that exciting. It's keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep going. I heard a lot of people say, and I believe this was true, don't quit before the miracle. Don't quit before that place. You could be 2 minutes away from success right now and you don't know it.
Yeah, exactly.
And 2 minutes from leveling up and moving forward. So that would be, and I know again it's simple, but it's the truth. It's and many entrepreneurs that I know and business owners that I know and very successful people that I know will say exactly the same thing. Just keep going.
Just keep going. Because you never know what's around the bend, so to speak. There's a lot of things that I don't necessarily regret, but I continue to look back on where I just make it practical. Like when I think I started did a YouTube thing at 2011, right? YouTube wasn't really all that big. But I was doing the things that the people doing now back in 2011. Not as great, but had I kept learning and doing, who knows where, I would be, because, you never know. Or there's other things that if I didn't stop, I would probably most likely be at a higher level of success than if I had quit. So what do you say to those people that those entrepreneurs or beginning business owners that want to quit, but we need to tell them to keep going, but they just quit? What do you? I mean, I know there's other things that can factor into that, but what would you say?
I would say it's always going to be a difficult journey, no matter what. If I quit And I have to think it through. I have to think through to the end. So if I quit and I still have that fire, I'm going to start something else.
Mm-hmm.
And if I quit and I don't feed that fire, but I still have it in front of me, and I accept something, and I don't mean this as a bad thing, but if I accept something that's not as challenging, or I accept something that's just, not commensurate with my capabilities or my fire, that's just like quitting. That's just like stopping. That's just like, for me, that's just like not allowing myself to be what I can be. And I'll feel that.
Mm-hmm.
I will feel that I'm not performing to my capabilities or striving to my capabilities. And so there's going to be times where things just don't work out, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And I can stop, and I can retool, and I can shift, and I think they call it pivot these days. I can pivot,
Yeah. Pivoting.
right?
Yeah.
I can choose a new direction, but I think the distinction there is I shouldn't quit because it's difficult, because difficult is just part of it. Difficult is something that we need to get used to, especially if we want to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Everything I've done, nothing has gotten much easier. It's just that I've built myself up to the point through those trials where I'm more able to withstand the ups and downs. I'm
Mm-hmm.
more able to go forward with confidence because I didn't quit, and because I understand that things are going to be difficult. So I think that's really the distinction that an entrepreneur needs to make when they're choosing whether or not to quit.
You're living a life that started the way it started. You moved on, and you're here now, where you are in your life. Do you feel like you're living your purpose, and are you in your purpose right now?
I do. And it's funny because I haven't felt that way until probably 2 years ago. And I'm not a young dude, so it, it could be said that we're living our purpose our entire life. We just don't recognize it until a certain point in our life. And I think there's some truth to that.
I like that.
But because who's to say that there aren't 17 purposes for my life?
Yeah.
There doesn't have to be one. And I feel like that's incredibly important to understand for me is my purpose. And I could get real philosophical, but I'm not gonna put you
It's
through
okay. Do it.
it.
I
Well,
love it.
there's a book called the Bhagavad Gita, which is a beautiful ancient writings, and there's a warrior who's tasked with fighting some of his family, some of his friends, some of the people that he knows, because they're sort of on the other side. And there's a sage there who is actually a god, quote unquote, in this tradition.
Mm-hmm.
And the god's like, dude, your purpose is to fight those people. Your purpose is to be a warrior. That's what you are. You're a warrior. So go fight.
Yeah.
And so his name was Arjuna, and the god's name was Krishna. And that was his purpose at that time. And I feel like my purpose at one point in my life was to drink and do drugs. And then my purpose was to get my head out of my butt. And then my purpose was to, have some success in business. And then now my purpose is to be an author and to share my story. So I think they all contribute, and they all could be called our purpose. They're just not maybe that sort of touchy-feely, warm, cozy thing that we're all looking for.
Right. Well, this is the kind of conversation that I've had over and over. Is like, you don't necessarily have just one purpose. You may have multiple purposes in different moments. For a dad in that one moment with his son or his daughter, it may be just being that best person, best father to that child. And then, maybe you have a different purpose within business. So like you said, 17 purposes you have. It's not just one purpose. So, don't necessarily get stuck with that one idea or ideal thing that you think is just the one purpose that you have as a human
Right.
being.
Right.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about this. I was going to wait till later, but you wrote a book. You wrote a couple books, and then I like the title of this first book is "When I Stopped Fighting: The Unexpected Joy of Getting My Head Out of My Ass." So I love the title, first of all.
Thank you.
What inspired you to write that book, and what is it about?
That book is about my journey, and I feel like I I have lived a life where I can help people, and I can help people best, I believe, in terms of my story, and to share my story. And I feel like that's, if there's one thing we all have to give in this world, it's our experience and our story, because somebody at some point might be able to relate to that story and say, you know what, I was there too, or I am there now, and you know what, I need to change, or I need to do things differently. So I believe our stories are incredibly crucial. And my story is, as we've talked about, has to do with addiction and dysfunction, and healing and taking risks, and ultimately freedom. But the freedom comes with all of it: the
Hmm.
winning, the losing, the doing dumb stuff, the doing some things that might be somewhat intelligent. It's all of it. And with my first book, I want people to understand it's not a you should book, or this is what you're supposed to do book.
Hmm.
It's a book that shares my experience, and hopefully, so that people can relate. So that's I look at it more as, falling down many times, getting up many times, and the lessons that I learned. That's really the book in a nutshell.
Okay, I like that. And then you have another book called "When You Stop Fighting: The Road You're On Is Your Own Asphalt." What's the difference between the two books there?
The first book is my story, and the second book is how can I help you with your story? And I feel like we all have a wish list in this lifetime, and the wish list probably includes, it may be a little different for everybody, but happiness and contentment, great relationships, peace of mind,
Hmm.
and we already talked about meaning or purpose, um, and some financial security. And I feel like there's elements of that everybody wants to acquire, but the question is, how do we go about getting there? And I went about getting there through drinking and drugs, and addictions, and I was addicted to nicotine, and even cigarettes and tobacco, and work, and a number of different things, and those things are easy to get attached to. So am I developing that wish list by reaching outside for all of these things, and reaching outside for my contentment, and how I present myself in my relationships, and to this world, and so what is stopping me?
Hmm.
And a lot of times those things are stopping me from getting to my wish list. And so how do we move forward? How do we change? How do we um how do we fail and still go? How do we falter and get up? And what does that journey look like? And the journey is on the inside. The
Yeah.
journey that I have to take is in here. And that's how all this stuff out there changes.
Yeah. Everyone has a story, right? And depending on who the person is, they may connect to your story for whatever reason. You just never know who you impact by sharing yourself. So if anyone has a story to tell and they don't know how, what advice would you give them?
You know, it's understanding that our stories are valuable. And I tell a story in my second book of a guy who many people may not listen to. And Bud, my mentor, said, he told me, listen to everybody. Everybody's got something to share, whether it's the CEO of a huge corporation, or the person at the grocery store, and many times, in the 12 steps, I was introduced to a lot of people who were homeless at that time. And there was a homeless guy at a meeting one time that said to me, or said at the table, he said, you can't change other people until they're willing and ready to change. And that was something that just hit me like a ton of bricks in the side of my head, because my sister had struggled with some of the same things that I was struggling with, and I was trying to get her out of it and save her and all that sort of thing. So what I would say to someone that's hesitant to share their story is, please share it. Because, and whatever you've learned to this point in your life, I don't care if you're 16 or 25 or 37 or 70, share, because you never know who you're going to affect and who you're going to help.
Yeah, that's one of the big things, is that everybody has a story. And when you're saying that, listen to everybody, because you just never know, like, what someone has on the inside. And that's very powerful. And do you think that from that advice that made you I don't know, a kinder person, or what did that advice give you?
It gave me, there's another word for humility, or another definition for humility, and I believe it is being teachable.
Mm.
And understanding that I don't know, I don't have all the answers. And it's very easy when we're younger to think that we have all the answers, and that everything we discover is brand new, and it's not, because there's a lot of wisdom that's come before us, and there's a lot of wisdom that came before me. And am I willing to study that wisdom, and to be teachable, and to listen to other people, and to understand that I don't have all the answers? And I think there's a wonderful breadth and depth of knowledge and experience that can be had by putting down what I think I know, and being open to what I don't know, which is, there's a lot more that I don't know than I do know.
Yeah.
And at this point
Yeah.
in my life, and I'm almost 60 years old, it's gotten even bigger of what
Yeah.
I don't know.
Of what you don't know.
Right.
And of what you don't know that you don't know.
Right. Exactly. Yes.
It's
Yes.
even bigger. The fact that you experienced life the way you have, what's your advice for entrepreneurs who feeling overwhelmed or stuck and want to move their life, or even entrepreneurs that might be suffering addictions in silence? What's your advice to them?
Well, in terms of feeling stuck, or feeling that they're in a spot where they're not moving, or things are changing, I'd say you have to figure out how to do things differently. And a lot of times, there was a couple things that Bud told me that are incredibly crucial in life, and both have to do with how I titled my books. But I grew up to fight. grew up to struggle. I grew up to battle. I grew up to, I played a lot of sports. If there's not a bone sticking out, you're not hurt. If you're struggling, swing harder. All of those things, right? Like just working against ourselves. And Bud told me one time, he said, Daryl, when you stop fighting, the fighting stops. And I was like, oh. So I've been ruminating on that for a long, long time. And that's why I titled my books When I Stop Fighting and When You Stop Fighting, because it's easy to be our own worst enemy. It's easy to put ourselves in a position where we're just wrestling and grinding and fighting, as opposed to doing something differently. Maybe as opposed to just grinding and grinding and grinding, maybe I need to take a break. Maybe I need to rest. And these are all things I had to learn over time, or maybe I have to learn how to approach things in a different way. And that can come from study, that can come from listening to podcasts of successful people. It can come from a lot of different things, but I'd say doing things differently is crucial. And regarding the addictions, another thing that Bud said to me was, he said, Daryl, first things first, and the rest will be added on. And I was like, okay, that sounds cool, but what's first? What's first, right?
Yeah.
And so that gets into a little more of a philosophical look, but it's what's first is to develop me. I have to develop me and develop my ability to withstand the tough times. And if I can develop me, I will have success in many areas of life. And I'm not talking about just financial success. I'm talking about the wish list from my second book. I'm talking about purpose and fulfillment and great relationships and all those sorts of things. And if I just have a pile of money, I haven't accomplished much. So to get to the success part, I have to let go of what's stopping me. I have to figure out how to jettison those addictions. And whatever those addictions are, we all know intrinsically what's going on with us. It's just a matter of, are we going to admit it to ourselves and then decide to change, or aren't we?
That's a lot to ruminate on. You grew up struggling and fighting. I think that when you said that, that was one of the things that I connect with, because just as a young person, I was always fighting. Not necessarily with other people, but when I did fight with other people, it was not. I was bad, but I was fighting with myself as well. And then you said once I stop fighting, the fighting stops. I think that through the things that I've learned, the places that I've been, I've learned how to do that for myself, and things would flow differently in my life. And I think that, that was profound. And I think it was wonderful to say. And then you said a lot of let go of what's stopping me. What is the initial step for people to begin to let go of when they first recognize, I guess that would be recognize the thing that's stopping them? When do they begin to let that go?
Well, it's we touched on it a little bit earlier, but it's getting sick and tired of being sick and tired. Yep. Getting sick of banging my head against the wall and doing the same thing and expecting different results, and just getting to a point where you're just done and you're ready to listen to something that may change your life, or change you, or change the direction. I look at, and I talk about this a lot in my second book, what's our trajectory? Are we headed north or are we headed south? And there's various degrees of north and south. I could be heading south going like this, or I could be going like that. Mm-hmm. And there was a point in my life when I was going like that. And then there's one of the things I talk about is heading toward true north, which we're never going to be perfect. We're never going to get it all right. We're never going to, just,
Right.
okay, I'm done. Wow, thank God that's over.
Yeah.
We're always going to be striving, and we're always going to have to be moving. So if you're in a place where you're just done, and you are sick and tired of being sick and tired, that's, I would say 98% of the time, that's what it takes before we're willing to accept new information and do things differently and start that process of change.
I like that. What's one piece of unconventional wisdom about business that you would give to an entrepreneur, or something that you strongly believe in?
Unconventional wisdom. Oh, let's see. That's a good question. I would say that stick your nose in as many things. Seriously, I've stuck my nose in a lot of places where initially it didn't belong.
Yeah.
In terms of learning and taking risks and trying and not being prepared. You don't have to prepare to be successful. You got to stick your nose in there and figure it out. Because if every time I'm going to try something new, I wait till I got it, it's not going to happen.
Not gonna happen.
I have to stick my nose in, and I have to risk, and risk is a huge word with a lot of implications, but you stick your nose in there, somebody might whack you. But you have to understand that that's just part of it. You're going to get whacked, and you're going to have difficult things happen, but those are the stepping stones, right? The tough things happen and I step, and another tough thing happens and I step. And if I don't quit, I keep leveling up. And you caught me off guard with that question, but I love it. I'm going to ask somebody else that question, because I think sticking your nose in is a big part of being successful.
I like it. I think that is unconventional, and you can't wait to be ready to, or get ready to be ready. You know what I mean? Take the risk, right? If there's one piece of legacy for yourself that you would like to leave behind, what would it be?
My legacy for me is my books. I was told this, and I'll just do a quick short story here. One of my partners in a business at one point said to me, he said, "Daryl, this business is going to be part of your legacy." And my stomach turned, and whatever was in me just curdled, because I didn't want a business to be my legacy. I want what I can give back to humanity to be my legacy, and to give back to people to help them grow or change or shift course or whatever it is. So I'm not done writing. I've done 2 books. I committed to writing 3, but who knows where it goes from there. I don't put parameters on what's possible anymore, because life has turned out 1,000 times better than I could have ever imagined. And so I would say my legacy is sharing my message and helping people change their trajectory and change their life, and help them move forward in their lives. And then they can do that for someone else.
To that point, as your last words on today's podcast, what would be, or is your advice to people who are listening or watching?
My advice is, if you want to feel contentment, and you want to feel fulfillment, and you want great relationships, and you want to feel like, hey, my purpose is being fulfilled, and I'm getting somewhere financially, you have to be willing to do what probably 95% of people on this planet are not willing to do. And if we look at successful people, they're, somewhere between 1% and 5% of getting to a place where people don't get to. And so if that's what you want and that's what you want to achieve, you're going to have to go through a lot more headaches, a lot more difficulty, and a lot more pain than most people are willing to allow themselves to go through. And to understand that and just understand that as a possibility going in, when the tough stuff happens, you'll say, you know what, that Daryl guy said that. I'm going to go through this and I'm going to go through tough stuff. And it's just a stepping stone. It's just a way to get to the next spot. I think that's probably the most important advice I can give if you really want to level up life.
Yeah. It's been sound advice you've been giving through the whole podcast. So first of all, I appreciate your openness and transparency of sharing where you started and how you transitioned through life and transformed yourself into the person that you are. And then sharing your gifts of just being human, a human being on this planet. So thank you for doing that and spending your time on this podcast. You have great wisdom and it's very appreciated. So I would like, how can, listeners and watchers get in touch with you?
Thank you, Michael, first of all, for saying that. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you having me on your show. The best way to find me is through my website, which is daryldittmer.com. And that's DARYLDITTMER.com. I also have a podcast, which is great fun. Michael, you're going to be on it here real soon.
Thank you.
If you want to be. And it's called When I Stop Fighting, the podcast. And that is Apple and iHeart and Spotify and YouTube and et cetera, et cetera. So you can find that anywhere. And my books are on Amazon. So you can either type in my name, Daryl Dittmer, or you can type in the title of the books, When I Stop Fighting or When You Stop Fighting, and they'll pop up on Amazon.
I like those. We'll definitely put everything. Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate that. And then we'll put everything in the description. So make sure you go to the description and click on those links that will be there. And, again, Daryl, thank you so much for being here and, again, sharing yourself. It makes our podcast, a full, awesome podcast to listen to because of people like you. So thank you again. And everybody that's listening and watching, to either go to Facebook, The Thrival Journey, for clips and other information that we share. And as we always say about this time, let's make thriving our new normal.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Daryl. Before you go, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being a part of the Thrival Journey. Every time you show up here, you're choosing growth, clarity, and the deeper work of becoming who you're meant to be in this world. And if you're ready to reconnect with what truly lights you up, I created something powerful that can help you. It's called the Empowered Path, 7 days to reclaim your purpose and passion. It's a beautifully designed, guided workbook that walks you through a week of powerful prompts, clarity building tools, and real mindset shifts. Now, you can get instant access to it today. It's a small investment for a huge return. Your energy, your clarity, your alignment. And if you want to take it deeper, check this out. I'm offering a limited number of free 30-minute purpose coaching sessions. No pressure, no pitch, just space for you to reconnect with your direction, your gifts, and what's next. So you can grab the guide and book your session at the link in the show notes. Let's not just go through the motions. Let's really walk this path on purpose. I appreciate you. And like we always say, let's make thriving our new normal. And I'll talk to you soon.